At MPL, we always value specialists more than generalists. What I mean by that is that our entire rewarding mechanism within the company, or incentive mechanism within the company, is if you do one task and score 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, you will always be rewarded way more than a person who does 3 tasks 7 on 10.
Hey Sai, thanks a lot for agreeing to do this. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Abhiral. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. Really looking forward to having a very free-flowing, honest, and a frank conversation. Yeah.
Amazing. Sai, so would love to start from the beginning. Very early days. I really like to understand founder journeys, especially growing up, childhood days, any early influences. Where did you grow up? What was your family upbringing like? Schooling, and then you went on to IIT, obviously. So if you walk through that journey, would love to understand that.
Sure. No, I think, so I was born in Hyderabad. My dad worked with State Bank of India. He's retired from State Bank of India now. And my mom's a school teacher in a government school. And so I was in a CBSE school till my 5th grade. And to be very honest, I was quite pathetic at academics, right? And then I moved to a state syllabus school and life became very, very good, right? I mean, suddenly I became better at academics, right? And I don't know, I think my mom made the change, and it was genuinely one of the best things she ever did. And since when I say acads, I'm not talking about the ability to quote something and like spit it out in an exam, but the ability to just understand and appreciate what's being taught to you, and what is the logic behind it, and why it is the way it is. It was very, very helpful moving into the new moving into the new school. I think till end of 10th, I honestly did not have a good understanding of what IITs were, or engineering, or I did not have a clear understanding of what I wanted to be very honest. But I think one of the best influences that I had is in my 9th and 10th grade, when I had the opportunity to participate in this district science fair and the state science fair, where you get to represent your own schools, and that was quite good, because not only did I win a significant number of awards, but I had the opportunity to work with this person who was a mechanical engineer who was a neighbor of ours, right? And he helped me put a bunch of projects together, and that actually stoked my interest in engineering problems and problem solving in general. So at the end of 10th is when I decided that I wanted to study aerospace engineering, and my first option was to see where it's available. And as you know, in India, the only places it's available is IITs, or you have to go outside, right? And my dad basically told me that, hey, you know what, you can go outside, but you'd have to figure out how you got to pay for yourself, right? As in, he'll get me the basics, but and the other option he put in front of me, that if you can crack IIT, then I will take care of end to end. Basically, everything will be paid for. I'm like, fair enough, right? And so I studied in a very normal place, not one of the fancy coaching centers, be it in Kota or even in Hyderabad. It's a very, very normal, very simple place. And the good part about this place, however, was the people who came and taught at this place were people who used to work in places like DRDO. There's this other chemistry institute in India, NCIT or something like that in Hyderabad. So multiple different people who worked in multiple really good places, and for them teaching was more a hobby than it was a profession, right? So they enjoyed teaching a lot. So the way they went about teaching was very, very different, and that kind of really, really gave me again very, very good understanding of how you look at problems in general and how do you approach problem solving. I did get into IIT. The funny story is my JE rank was 1408. My MCET rank, state rank, was I think about 6,000. My AIEEE rank was 4,000, right? So it just so happened that, I mean, my parents, everybody had given up, right? And there's no way we were going to make it into IIT. But funnily enough, that was the only rank which was the best rank. Everything else was like quite average or pathetic, if I must say. Then I joined IIT. I think IIT Kanpur was a very, very good experience. It was, I think, one of the things about IIT Kanpur was that because it was not in a place like Delhi or Bombay or Madras, you had very little distractions, right? You honestly had your wingmates, and and the one very good thing was it had great internet connection. Like the internet we have today, IIT Kanpur used to have it then in the campus, right? And back in college itself, we tried our hands at a couple of startups, like most people do, I guess. But yeah, both of them eventually failed, and eventually we had to shut them down towards the last year of campus, or should I say, first year after college. I think the turning moment in my career came when I had the opportunity to work as a game designer and as a product manager with Zynga. Uh, Zynga was Zynga was a pioneer in gaming, especially when it came to freemium gaming and microtransactions. And for me, Zynga was like a finishing school. And Zynga really, really taught me what product management meant at scale. It gave me the opportunity to work with some of the smartest people out there, some of the smartest artists, some of the smartest game designers, some of the smartest creative, and some of the smartest functional thinkers. When I say creative thinkers, I'm talking about more like artists, game designers. Functional, more like business guys and product managers, right? So it also gave me a great amount of appreciation for the art of gaming, right? Um, gaming is gaming is probably the only form of content in the world, and people don't understand this and appreciate this enough, but gaming is the only form of content in the world that doesn't have a language, right? It's not like movies or audio or even this podcast, right? We're speaking in English here, right? But a game of pool is a game of pool for an American, for an Indian, for a Chinese, for a German, right? There's no other content in the world that actually can say that it has no language. And game design is the language, is fundamentally the language of nature. It's fundamentally the language of mathematics. Everybody understands it, right? And at Zynga, I really appreciated that. And and that set me up. And then after that, we started our first company called Creo. And then in 2018, we started MPL.
No, amazing. And I think, you talked about people not having expectations from you during the JE days, as well as, your second company, your first company, not your second company. And your first company, as you mentioned earlier, was not a success. A lot of people would love to understand, how that journey went. When did you realize that things were not working and you'd want to do something else? And how did it contribute to actually building MPL like it is today?
Right. And I think so first and foremost thing I forgot to add there is that throughout my engineering days in IIT, 4 years, I had 5 backlogs, right? So I failed 5 courses, right? So it's quite an achievement, trust me. Very few people have 5 backlogs and also make it out in 4 years flat, right? So I somehow managed to do that, right? So so I was never too fussed about failure in general. I think the first time when I failed a course in IIT, that was the toughest one. It was like you're breaking your virginity. But then after that, it was pretty much downhill from there. Okay, you know what? You failed once, you failed twice, it ain't gonna matter. The first company we started was a hardware company, right? And hardware is very, very tough to do, right? It is incredibly tough to do, right? And we really underestimated how tough it was. Me, Shubham, who's also my co-founder now at MPL, we both started this, TV streaming device company called TV. Not to be confused with T and V. This is TWWE, right? That was one of the biggest problems with the name, by the way. But we both started the company wanting to build this product, having no experience, no idea of how hardware is to be made, right? And no idea, absolutely zero idea about hardware, right? And then for some reason, we raised a seed round of 1.5 crore, right? And for some reason, we decided to find a manufacturing partner in India. And I don't want to name the people, etc., so on and so forth, right? But the manufacturing partner out of the 1.5 crore we raised, gobbles up 50 lakhs and basically shows up with no product, right? So here we are, have to service a large order. And this guy shows up with, this guy takes the money and then shows up saying, yeah, main bana nahi sakta hu. The funny thing is, it's a small device, right? And he's put in a chip inside it and he's making holes into that device so that there is air circulation because the chip was overheating so much, right? It was quite bad, right? It was really, really bad. And yeah, and then that landed us in a soup. But we somehow figured out how to manufacture. by finding different partners in Taiwan, in multiple other countries, right? And we put together a device, and we used to assemble that device ourselves, by the way, right? In our small shack of an office in Koramangala. It's near the. I mean, it's on the 80 feet road, I think. Yeah, 80 feet road, right? And we launched the device. We sold about a good 75,000-80,000 units of that device. And just so you know, selling hardware in India is very, very tough. And we sold 80,000 units. And then for some reason, we just came up with this idea, let's go make a phone, right? Don't ask me why. Don't, like, when you look back and when you find reasons for it, it was not probably one of the smartest decisions. And right, and we decided कि हमने ये hardware बना लिया है, एक छोटा dongle, अब चलो phone बनाते हैं. And not only did we decide to make a phone, but we decided to make a very expensive phone, right? That's another big mistake, right? And it was very tough. But in a year flat, we did make a phone. I'd say it was a decent product. I wouldn't say it was a great product, but it took a lot out of the company. It took a lot out of us also, as me and Shubh, both of us. I think we were very forthcoming in accepting that it was not an easy thing to make a phone in very little capital and try to sell that phone, etc., so on and so forth, right? So it eventually, when we launched the phone, and a month or two after that, we just realized that this is a very, very hard thing to do. And we entered a fight where people are fighting with the guns, or should I say with rocket jets, with knives, right? It ain't gonna work, right? We ain't gonna survive in this kind of environment. And that is when we decided that we think we should sell the company, right? I think the right point I think one of the key learnings there was that when you don't know what next as a founder, I think selling the company might be a good option, right? Because then someone else might help you figuring out what's next. We're very lucky to have sold the company. The team was an exceptional team. Just so you know, the team that put those, it was an exceptional engineering team. I think easily one of the best engineering teams that I've ever come across, right? Like, with their ability to put stuff together and build a device in less than a year. I mean, I don't see most engineering teams in Bangalore even matching up to that, right? So very, very good team. We got acquired. We spent a year and a half in the acquisition. And yeah, and one of the key learnings from this entire thing, this entire episode, was like, market is like a river, right? You can have the best rowers, but if you're rowing upstream, eventually you will be tired. Eventually you will die, right? But if you're rowing downstream, even if you're an average rower, right, the market will carry you forward, right? So people often make a big fuss about founders, teams, etc., so on and so forth. But I think the biggest game changer in all of this is the market, right? You identify the right space in the right market, right? Of course, if you're an idiot of a founder, then any market you're going to goof it up, right? But if you identify the right market and you put your boat downstream in that market and then row as hard as you can, then great things can happen. In the case of our previous company, the market was good 3 or 4 years before we went into it, right? We were just too late into it, and it was very, very tough to achieve anything in it. I think that was the most fundamental learning. The second most fundamental learning that we had was outcome is always more important than output, right? Far too many times founders keep telling, hey, you know what, this is how I made it. This is how hard it was to build this. This is how many hours we struggled to build this. As a founder, I empathize with that. I understand that, right? But man, the market is not going to care. Like, the market really doesn't care कि आपने कितने घंटे लगाए, कि आपने 15 घंटे लगाए, 20 घंटे लगाए, 18 घंटे लगाए. मार्केट को फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, right? मार्केट को बिल्कुल ही, they don't care whether you built it with a 3-member team, 5-member team, 7-member team. The only thing the market cares about is the outcome. The outcome meaning, okay, what do you have to show for it, right? Do you have, okay, if it's an engagement based product, then do you have a DAO? Do you have time spent? That's it. So sometimes when founders say that, these investors don't understand us, he just doesn't understand the product. इनको product की समझ ही नहीं है. Yeah, I think it's more the founder not understanding the market. It's not the other way around. Most founders do this, and I used to do this, right? I was a big culprit of this, right? I used to always say that, hey, they don't understand the product. No, they absolutely understand the product, but they are not investing in you because you can work 15 hours a day or 16 hours a day, or you're or you're doing or you have like great engineers, right? All they are looking at is what's the outcome, right? And what's the outcome going to be a year down the line, 2 years down the line. So you have to be very, very outcome focused, right? That was the second thing. That was the second thing I realized, right? And the third and the most important thing I realized was specialists are always more important than generalists. In the world of startups, we always tend to make this mistake that we hire generalists. Hey man, why don't you handle BD? Why don't you do a little bit of marketing? Why don't you do a little bit of growth, etc., so on and so forth, right? It's a very comforting thing to do, because in your head you're thinking ki, maine is bande ko laga diya and this guy is going to handle 3 or 4 different things. But man, the fact of the matter is, in your company, you're looking for that alpha. You are looking to deliver that alpha from either growth or either product, right? That alpha only comes from specialists. That alpha doesn't come from generalists, right? You find the right person who's really good at what they do and let them do it, right? Don't find a guy who's good at sales and tell him, hey, you know what, jaake thoda marketing bhi kar lo. It will never work, right? I think these were my 3 key learnings. I mean, if you were to ask what did I pick up from my previous company?
Amazing. And so, you learned all this, and obviously, not everyone is lucky enough to, really realize that they built something, it's not working, but they learned something from it. And MPL was off to the races very quickly. And I believe that's because of the learnings you had over the years. Why did you decide to build a real money gaming platform? What was the thought process there?
Sure. See, I think, so I think first and foremost, the one thing I decided after, after my previous company is that I wanted to build a company where I focused as much on digital and as little on physical as possible. Like, I didn't want to get into logistics. I didn't want to get into any of those kind of situations where there's logistics or any physical movement involved, right? The second thing I realized is that gaming always takes off when there is a trifecta in place, which is a device, data, and payment, right? If you don't have either one of these 3, gaming never takes off. In any country you look at it, gaming has always taken off when all these 3 things came together: device, data, and payment. Interestingly, in India, payments, which is the third piece, only came about in 2016, right? When UPI started. I mean, we can talk about wallets all we want, but it's very, very clear that, the real game changer is UPI. Wallet is basically, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, right? It's the same thing, right? You're still using credit cards, right? But when that happened in 2018, I think for me, the more important thing was, how do I enable microtransactions at scale in India, right? And the second thing I wanted to very clearly do was that from my experience in Zynga, we never wanted to be a game studio, right? We never wanted to be in the business of building games. The simple reason being, when you're building a lot of games, like some might work, some might not work, right? But if you're building a platform, right, then the platform always works, right? For the simple reason being, a shopping mall always flies. Now, what shops are running in the shopping mall? You don't know. Sometimes you walk into a shopping mall, sometimes you see a shop, and then 3 months later you come to the same shopping mall, the shop isn't there, right? But the shopping mall is still there, right? Forum is still around, Garuda is still around, so many malls are still around, but the shops inside them keep changing, right? Why is that, right? It's just because shopping mall is a very clear fixed destination in the user's head or the consumer's head. I'll go here and I'm going to check out a bunch of stores and I'm going to buy some stuff. As simple as that, right? Now, with that in mind, when we did a recce of the market and we understood the market, our clear inkling was that the best and the most effective way of enabling microtransactions at scale in India is through competitive money gaming, right? And this is how Indians like to monetize, right? The Westerners have decided that, hey, you know what? I'll buy skins and I'll buy this and I'll buy that, virtual goods and so on and so forth. That is their way of monetizing. Great. But yeah, karwa. Right? I'm not saying it's not going to happen in India. India also, it'll take off. It'll take time. But in India, people are more comfortable saying, you know what, if I play a game of chess with you or a game of pool with you, I'd love to play it with an entry fee, right? I'd love to compete with you, right? Indians fundamentally like competition, right? Right from when we were kids, right? I'm sure people who are there on this, who are live on this podcast also would remember these, but I am 100% sure we all played a cricket game where each person in the team put in 100, $200 to register in a tournament, where there are 10 or 15 teams that competed in the tournament together. And then the team that won it had a big prize money that they got, right? So we weren't reinventing anything, boss, right? We weren't finding something new. We just realized that this is something which is there, which is a part of how we've gone about things, right? And we just said, why don't we enable this and enable this at scale and figure out a way where we can bring in third-party game developers on the platform? That insight of delivering all of that together in a platform, I think, was gold. And us making a fundamental decision that we will not make games ourselves, I think, was the second really, really good design decision that we made. And we were very lucky, to be honest, to have had some incredible specialists bang at the time of launch, right? It was almost like we had people who were A at their game or A plus at their game at MPL at the time of launch. And, even till date, we're very, very fortunate to have some exceptionally talented people dealing with stuff. And which is the reason why we went through charts very, very fast, right? We started and we went from, I think, 0 to 1 million DAO in about 3 months. This was on Playstore. When we started, we were on the Playstore, right? And then eventually we got off the Playstore. So now the story, but went through it very, very fast. I also remember us after launching. We launched on September 8th, and I believe we went and spoke to Virat's manager in the first week of November, right? And we thought it was a joke. We thought, let's go see what happens. And as fate would have it, we eventually were able to convince him and bring him on as brand ambassador. I think some of these things are luck, right? You can't plan these things, right? Sometimes you need this luck to go your way, and we were very, very fortunate to have had some luck along the way.
No, just amazing. I really like that insight. The best way to enable transactions is real money gaming. I think that's incredible. It's something I relate to. So our topic for this week's episode is building a gaming company. And so I wanted to take a step back first. When you started to do this, why did you decide to go mobile first when games had already been running on desktops for decades?
So I think, let me put it this way, Mazen. You can build desktop games and console games all you want, but the total number of desktops in India combined, right? MG Road and Koramangala combined will have more mobile phones than the total number of desktops and consoles in India combined, right? So there is no point, right? Even if I were to build, again, the same market argument, right? Even if I were to build the best goddamn mobile console game or should I say a PC game, that isn't going to fly, right? There are hardly any people with a PC or a console, and which is also one of the biggest arguments we keep having, right? There are many people who keep saying that esports should only be PC-led or esports should only be console-led. My entire point to them is, boss, who are you and me to decide this, boss, right? 99% of this country has a mobile phone, right? Are you telling me that you will deprive people who have a mobile phone the opportunity to compete just because they can't own a PC? I mean, it just sounds stupid to me, right? And yeah, so it was a bit of a no-brainer for us to do it mobile, and we're still mobile focused. We honestly believe that the mobile gaming industry, across all of its facets, in the next 4 to 5 years, will be way larger than the PC and console gaming industry combined. It's just the size of the market. It's just huge.
And you spoke about, making the conscious decision to not build your own games. Can you talk us through that process of expanding? How did you get third-party game developers to your platform?
Sure. So in the first few games, honestly, when we said we were working with third-party developers, we used to work with developers where I used to personally help them with game design a lot. And I used to sit down and do a lot of the game design along with them. I used to help them with game design, and they used to help us develop the games, right? And we used to create a standardized format of game development, right? Where the entire meta around the game, for example, the competitive leaderboards, etc., all of that stuff is already there in MPL. So the only thing that they had to build was the game. So think of it like a good old CD player, right? Like, you used to have those CD players with 5 different CDs or 6 different CD slots, that thing, right? And you just have to plug the CD in, and it plays the music, and everything else is taken care of. So that's how it was with MPL, right? Our entire thought process was, let's just plug the core game in, and everything around it, all the bells and whistles will come from MPL, and that worked pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly must have shortened the time to develop a game and the things that people.
Oh yeah, significantly, right? For example, we take anywhere between 2 to 3 months or 2 months to put in a game from scratch to into the platform, and that time is only getting better and better.
And now, with real money gaming, you run the risk of regulatory hurdles, and I was just curious, how do you kind of deal with that landscape? How do you what fails safe?
I think Mazen, fundamentally we are a platform, right? And secondly, it's about education, right? I think any industry that deals with frontier technology always will have to take the onus of ensuring that they educate the community, educate the regulators, and educate everyone. When I say educate, fundamentally explain to them, because this is how it works, this is what it is. I don't think anyone has an issue with people playing chess competitively, people playing pool competitively, people playing PUBG competitively, people playing cricket competitively, right? There are, of course, certain games where there might be certain concerns. And I think the right way to understand it and play it out is to fundamentally lay this out that not all games are the same, right? There are some games which are very different from the other games, right? It's a huge bouquet of games that are available in the world, right? I think educating the ecosystem, constantly explaining and being very clear about what you're trying to do, and most importantly, taking strong protection measures for the customers and ensuring that you're being responsible in the way you're handling customers, I think it goes a long way. I believe see the US also, right? I mean, there have been some hiccups, but eventually, as more and more states understood what it is, things start getting better and better. So I think even in India, I think the point is about explaining and enabling and ensuring that people understand this. And when they do, I believe they will see the advantages of doing this.
So on one side, you have to educate your customers, regulators. On the other side, you're trying to build a sort of standardized platform that people plug into. How did you go about structuring the team with all of this? I mean, imagine.
Yeah. Our entire philosophy, like I said, is very clear. At MPL, we always value specialists more than generalists. What I mean by that is that our entire rewarding mechanism within the company, or incentive mechanism within the company, is if you do one task and score 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, you will always be rewarded way more than a person who does 3 tasks 7 on 10, right? That's the first philosophy of how we do incentives at MPL. The second thing is we are always looking at hiring specialists. We never hire generalists, right? We just don't like that philosophy of saying that, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do that. For example, take a great football team, right? Take a great football team. A great football team will always give you very clear. You will always have people who have very clear roles. Like a defender does defense, right? Of course, when he goes into the other side and there's a corner, he will try to head the ball in. But the moment the corner is done, he's going to run back to the defense, right? It's not going to be like he's going to hang around at the forward position and hope for the best for defense, right? So I think when you have specialists and when you enable them, when you give them the flexibility and freedom to do their work, and you don't poke your nose in a lot, it is a very enabling thing. For example, my focus in the company is only product, right? Naman, who leads operations and strategy, he focuses on revenue and he focuses on the business, right? Joe, who handles corp dev and investor relations, his job is to focus on fundraise, right? So I'm not the subject matter expert on these things. So whoever is the subject matter expert, they do their stuff, right? I do my stuff. And when you have a group of people who understand that philosophy and that principle and respect each other for their capabilities, I think what you have is an exceptionally capable team. And you have a team and a company where leadership is decentralized, where everything is not centralized. Everything is not like, okay, I got to go ask the founder. I got to go talk to the founder. I have to get the supreme commander's approval, right? I think that's not how we work, right? We believe in speed. We've always believed that the speed at which you move can sometimes really sometimes really surprise the market and your competition, be it in India or be it in any country. And the only way to move fast is when you enable people to make their decisions themselves and create more decentralized system. One of the principles we have at MPL, just so you understand what I'm trying to say, is that we always say blame the process and not the person. So for example, when something goes wrong, the first mistake we always tend to do is we always tend to think, usne galti kiya hai, isne galti kiya hai, this guy screwed up or that guy screwed up. The fact of the matter is we as humans always screw up, right? That's not going to stop, right? But you got to figure out what is the right process and how would you implement the right process so that this mistake doesn't happen the next time. So as a company, we always have this philosophy of blame the process and not the person. And we're constantly trying to make our processes better. And it might sound very counterintuitive because people in the startup ecosystem think process is bureaucracy. Process is basically what your company does and how it does every single day. The other hippie way of calling process is culture, right? So they are net the same thing, right? So from our perspective, we want to be an exceptionally strong process-driven organization, but an extremely decentralized organization, and that is our way of building a strong culture.
No, that's amazing insight. And I think it's almost counterintuitive, right? When you start off, you're doing a little bit of everything and then to transition to create that process around it, so that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Play Store. So I have to ask about it. What happened there and why was MPL never brought back on the Play Store?
See, I think MPL was never brought back onto the Play Store because Google has certain opinions on how gaming should be done, right? And I respect them. It's their platform and it's their call. Apple, on the other hand, is a much more clearer policy and a very well-structured policy, if I may add, right? So it's not only us, right? Pretty much everyone in the ecosystem is not on the Play Store, right? And we had a very clear opinion that people will find the app, irrespective of whether it's on the Play Store or not on the Play Store. But the most important thing is to provide the customer with the right experience. Just because Google believes that this is something that they don't allow or etc., we shouldn't compromise on what our experience was. I think that was the best decision we made, right? And we were, I think, number 1, number 2, or number 3 when we got when we went out of Play Store, right? And I think we have no regrets. I think it's probably, in fact, if you ask me in the company's life, what was the most impactful decision? I think one of the best decisions was this just getting out of the Play Store. I think it taught us what monetization is. It taught us the importance of monetization, because naito we would be still playing the DAO game, right? Our DAO is this much, our retention is this much, etc., so on and so forth. But the moment we got out, we started playing the monetization game, right? And monetization is I mean, it's just incredible, right? To give you to give you context, it just makes it much more easier and much better to run that entire thing outside of Play Store. Of course, there are. Would I like to be back on Play Store? Of course, yes. There's significant advantages, right? Your top of the funnel gets much better, right? You could probably get a lot more installs at a much cheaper rate. But is my business vastly getting impacted? Probably not, right? I think providing the right, our learning from it. If I were to look back and if I were to encapsulate our learning, if there is a product market fit, right? Okay. It really doesn't matter if Google's in the way, Facebook's in the way, anybody is in the way, right? Customers will find your product no matter what, right? And we were, honestly, when that happened, we were quite scared ourselves that we were like, is this going to play out? Is this going to work out, right? But I think this is one of the key learnings that we had. If there is a product market fit, nobody can stop you. I think market is the ultimate power, right? Once the market told you, right, it's like a flowing river, right? Nobody can stop it, right? So from our perspective, I think we were very fortunate, and I'm quite hopeful, honestly, that Google in the longer run will realize the value and the amount of enablement that this brings to developers, right? Developers can monetize their games in newer ways, in better ways, right? And I think Google, like Apple, in the longer run would probably enable this in India as well. So Google has this in some of the other geographies, by the way. It's just that in India they don't. So hopefully they may figure this out sooner rather than later.
And so wanted to ask about, so recently your entry into Indonesia looked like that was a huge success. So wanted to quickly ask about where you're headed next in terms of expansion.
Yeah. No, we are definitely headed to some more countries. This time more westward than eastward, and Indonesia for us was an eye-opening experience, right? For us, it taught. It was very it became very easy. It became not easy. It was not easy to fundamentally run a product in another country, right? As in, there are very few Indian consumer startups in the internet space who've successfully taken their product to multiple countries, right? So Indonesia for us was a learning experience to figure out how we should set up our teams, what are the practices that we should have, and so on and so forth, right? And we perfected that with Indonesia, right? And now we are way more confident of taking the product to multiple other countries, including some developed economies out there, right? So hopefully in the course of the next 2-3 weeks or 4 weeks, we'll be able to tell you more about which countries we would go to.
Amazing. And Sai, just building on that, I think the question on everyone's mind is, how is every company dealing with the pandemic? I guess it's been a big boost to you guys. But are there any structural changes that you think have happened because of the pandemic and people staying at home?
I mean, I don't know, man. Like, all I can say is that, it's not, it's the situation is that, to be very honest, in our companies, that at least 20-25% of the companies either directly or indirectly impacted. So there are people who are either directly ill or they have their immediate loved ones impacted, right? So from our perspective, I think what the pandemic has forced us to do is to make our delivery processes very, very tight, right? The engineering process is very, very tight, so that it makes it a little more easier for people to work from home. When you have very chaotic processes, right, it becomes very difficult to coordinate with people when they're working from multiple different places. So in fact, from September last year to March this year, our entire focus was to basically streamline our own entire delivery operations, right? To bring in a lot of method and a lot of structure into that. And I think that's made our outcomes a lot more predictable. When I say outcomes, what are we releasing, when we're releasing, and what date we're releasing. We can have a very, very predictable outcome, a very predictable roadmap for the next 6 months. This thing sounds very obvious. I mean, says like, isn't this something that every company should do? But trust me, when you get to doing it, and when you're doing it in 10 people, it's a different ballgame. When you're doing it among 60 people, it's a different ballgame. When you're doing it among 600 people, boss, it's very difficult, right? Aligning 600 people simultaneously on a roadmap is extremely, extremely difficult, right? And all respect for all the program managers out there who do this in and out. I think the kind of work, sometimes program managers' work is underrated. It is during this time that we realized how important they are and how much they can enable a company to be successful. So that I think was a function that we realized exceptional merit of during these times.
That's amazing. I think that's one thread I've noticed during our conversation as well, how much you care about building an institution that is abstracted away from people. And I think what you've seen the pandemic do is make the company even better at coordinating and executing at scale. That's a great insight. No, Sai, so amazing. Our last question, which we ask all our guests, which is why we call this Founders Unfiltered, is what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you've received in your journey as a founder, or when you were working at other firms, that really changed the way you look at your life, your career, or how you operate? Something that's really stayed with you.
I think the first piece of advice that I got was this thing of outcome is always more important than output, right? I think it's something that fundamentally changed the way I approach everything. It's all outcome driven. It's all backwards from outcome, right? We want to achieve this. Let's go backwards from that. more often than not, we tend to look at it the other way around. We say, we've got X amount of money, we've got Y amount of resources. Now let's figure out what we can make out of this, right? I think that's one way of doing things, right? You got to work backwards from what you want. Say, for example, you want 10,000 installs, and every decision you got to make should work backwards from 10,000 installs. That means you need a really strong referral. You need a really strong, so your decision making becomes better when you look at it that way. I think that is one of the I think the first piece of advice that I got. I think the second piece of advice that I got, which I think was really eye-opening for me and fundamentally changed the way we operate the company, is that the job of a leader is to be jobless. What I mean by that is your number one job as a leader is to make yourself redundant in the system. That is, you hire people better than you so that your time you become redundant, as in you have more time to give to problems which others aren't thinking about. These are problems 6 months down the line, or 9 months down the line, or a year down the line, right? I think the first year of MPL, I really did not understand this. I used to practically get involved into everything, and it has to be a real paranoid human being. Still I am, but then I used to be a real painful human being also. I think when I started realizing the importance of this, I've now stepped back from a lot of these things, and I have the time and space to actually focus on things which are more long term. Let's say, long term in our life is 6 to 9 months or to a year. I think if you can think out a year out, I think that's a good place to be in, I guess.
No, amazing. I think it's so focused on getting things done versus coming up with reasons and other such things. Sai, thanks a lot for this conversation. We really enjoyed speaking to you.
Thank you, Aviral.
Really wishing you a lot of success and even more growth over the next 10 years.
Thank you.
Hopefully this becomes a very, very large company and a Facebook at some time, which people will talk about. Thanks a lot, Sai, for doing this.
Thank you, Aviral. Thank you so much for having me here, and my best wishes to you and everybody at Junior VC as well.